Hello, Facebook world. Andrew Logan here. Great to be with you on a live interview. We are live on my wall. We're live in the Way Out community. We're also up on YouTube as well. So wherever you're watching us, it's great to have you here. It's Thursday night here in Australia. I hope you've had a great day. And as you can see, I have a very, very important guest, a very, very special guest, the most important person in my life, my muse. My beautiful wife, Angie, is here because it's episode 250 of the Way Out podcast and all the big benchmark numbers. It's great to bring a great guest on and do a bit of a live podcast recording, a live training. So, Angie, thanks for being here for episode 250.
Thank you for having me. Now, I have noticed there's a slight lag, so I hope that's not affecting things.
Well, it sounds all right from here. Well, hopefully the audio comes out, obviously, because it's for the podcast. And I know you've listened to the other 249 episodes when I'm yelling them out in my office and you're in the kitchen preparing lunch or whatever it is. But I think this is your third or fourth time actually on the podcast as a guest. So yes. We're going to get into connection and talk about all things connection because Angie is just an absolutely amazing connector and she's going to give you top tips and questions you can ask and like scripts and all those sorts of things, because connection is at the base of every single thing we do, obviously, but especially in business. We want to be able to create great connections so that we can build a great business. But just before I do, as I said, if you're on Facebook, drop a love heart, comment in where you're listening in from. Let us know what time it is, wherever you are in the world listening in. And if you're on YouTube as well, if you haven't yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Join in the channel, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button as well. Comment and let us know where you're watching this video from. So, Angie, whenever I do interviews, I always just like to start with the elephant in the room because we might as well just get the big thing out there straight away. Ever since we've known each other, ever since, we met all those 16, 17, 18 years ago when we met through work, through the real world and, fell in love and got married and all those sorts of things, you are just the most incredible connector, and you seem to be able to instantly build rapport and friendship and connection with people. And sometimes it's annoying. Like I joke that we can't just go to the shops and the kids need milk and it takes you 45 minutes because you just go and make 7 best friends on the way to get milk for the kids before school. But what I do want to say, and like an elephant in the room, for some people it can just be like, well, she's a natural connector. I struggle, and it's easy for her, but it's not easy for me. So I'd love to just know, were you always like that? Or is this something that you have worked on and prioritized and learned? Is this a skill that you've developed, or you were just born as someone who could just go up and talk to people?
It's a very good question. So I do believe that some people are a little more naturally inclined to have a little more skill or talent when it comes to connecting, or maybe even just the desire to do so, when we consider introverts versus extroverts. But Andrew, I do know for myself, one of the big things was in my early 20s, I started studying counselling, and obviously there's a fair bit of psychology involved in that. And they really dug into the topic of communicating and connecting. And so really delving into that really opened my eyes to think there is so much more to this than what I realised. We're not taught this in school. Well, we weren't back when I went to school back in the 80s and 90s. Maybe it's different now. But I did realize when I was learning all the different facets of it that it affects so many areas of our lives. So in business, like for you and myself, for the last 10 or 11 years, connecting or connection is probably the foundational skill that to learn and develop. When we consider relationships, so as husband and wife, or even relationships with our parents, even with our children. And so the impact of what it can do, I really did see that it was a skill that needed to be developed on. Even now, there's certain topics and different areas that I speak on with this, and every day for me, it's still something that I'm conscious of and working on, the personal development, the growth, the audibles, the reading, the podcast, but more importantly, the actual practical side of it. So going out and having the conversations and the desire to become better at connecting.
Intentional connection, isn't it? And I think, well, obviously, unpack things, but as you say, the intention to go out and work on that skill. I love to talk about leadership, as many people know. And again, there's that, the natural born leader. He or she is just a natural born leader. But like anything, leadership is a skill, connection is a skill, confidence is a skill, going to the gym and lifting heavy weights is a skill. It's just something we have to have the intention of. So I just want to shout out, we got like Chris in from Germany, we got Faith from just down the road, Sharon from the Central Coast, Bonnie, Scotland, South Australia. We've got people all around the world listening in, which is really, really cool. So in the comment section, let us know, are you someone who is a great connector, or is this something that you're willing to work on, you're wanting to work on so that you can build that muscle just like any other muscle? Now, Angie, you mentioned communication, essentially, like as a husband and wife, we have to communicate. As parents, we have to communicate with our children, all those sorts of things. So is connection essentially communication? Is it about talking and communicating with people, or is connection actually different to communication?
Well, my take on it is that the terms are often used interchangeably. I do believe, though, that communication is an exchange of information, whereas connection it's more of an emotional experience on a personal level, where you're really getting to know someone in that an emotional way. So it's far greater and deeper than just an exchange of knowledge. So that's kind of my take on the two, although they are often sort of used in the same context. So yes, we can all communicate, but the really deep and like what's more impactful is what's going to come into the connection. So that's more of what I have tried to develop my skills around, is the actual connections.
Awesome. And obviously, we're talking social media and the real world, right? Like it's not, some people can get caught up in that social media barrier, but when we go into this a little bit more, we can look at the fact that connection is, there's many facets to it, right? It's not just, I think, and again, people are looking for just that one simple sort of answer, but there's many facets to connection. And so how do you break it down to help people understand, if they're sort of, this is something they really struggle with? How do you break down connection?
Yeah. Well, the three areas that I look at, the first one is visually. So we're really taking on board there body language, so eye contact. And as far as we all know body language it can sort of account for over 50% of communication. So it's our eye contact, it's our open body language. Are you approachable? Do people see you as someone that they can warm to and actually open up to and have a conversation or connect with? So body language is a big thing. I mean, it's very deep. It goes into tonality, your volume, the speed of your voice. You've kind of got that side of it. We've also got the intellectual communication side of it, or connection of it. That's more about getting really good at asking questions. And then when you get the responses to those questions, you're building on them. And that's where you're building depth into the connection. And then the third part is an emotional connection. So that's deeper again. And that's obviously, so with your intellectual connection, that's when you're meeting someone very quickly. It's quite brief. You're kind of skimming the surface, getting to know the basics. And then, as I said, you're building on those answers to construct questions that are going to dig a lot deeper and really establish common ground, and then building rapport, and then an extension of that, the actual forming of friendships.
Awesome. So I just want to come back to connecting visually, because, we've, like, social media is bigger and bigger. And obviously a lot of us have spent a lot of the last few years in particular stuck behind Zoom and messaging. And sometimes it can be difficult to convey body language, but the reality is, it's still, if you're on a Zoom, it's very obvious when someone's not that interested. I mean, I think we can think that we're hiding behind a computer screen and it doesn't really matter, but people can see your energy, people can see your eye contact on the Zoom straight away, right? It matters just as much, if not even more. I know, like, whenever I'm training behind a video screen, you have to be doubly as visual and emotional in the message you're putting across, because you have to give all that extra body language.
Absolutely. And the big thing with the visual connection side of it is getting rid of distraction. Now, that can be external distraction. So it could be your phone, it could be people passing by, it could be the cat on your desk, whatever it is. It can be internal dialogue as well, where your mind strays off thinking about what you're going to make for dinner, or you're lingering, you're hanging on to something that they've just said before. So distraction is a really big thing that we need to shift. So probably the most important thing to sum that bit up is being fully present and focused on the conversation or the exchange that you're having. Because as you say, people, they're not silly. We're not silly. You know if someone's tuning out, you know if you don't have someone's full attention. And so I think that it's respectful. Value your time, value their time, and going into each conversation thinking to yourself, what is it that I can learn from this exchange with someone? What is it, something they could enrich my day or enrich my life, or just the lesson to be learned?
Awesome. Now, you spoke about, hey, Candace is here. So just looking at all the comment sections so we've got people from Africa now, which is really, really awesome. People all over the continents of the world jumping on. Now, you were talking about questions before, and I always love like Tony Robbins quote. One of my favorite of Tony's, and just a general favorite quote, is he says, if you want better questions, work on asking better questions. And I think that's, again, when people are looking to connect and looking to build connection, questions are a great way to do that. But like, what is a great connection? We need to obviously ask, like, what's a great connecting question? Before we do that, but just probably, again, like slight tangent, but just something I was just thinking of while we're talking about that. Not everyone is open for connection, right? Again, and especially, you go up to a party, you're at a party and there's 50 people. Not all 50 people are like, it's super interested in starting a new conversation. Sometimes they're like, I've got my circle, I've got my friends. And again, on social media, sometimes people can reach out and they say, I reached out to this person and they didn't really respond. Maybe some people just aren't as open. We can't have like 100% strike record with every conversation we start, right?
Exactly. And I think the main thing there is we need to respect people's boundaries. And even for someone like myself, who I love connecting with people, I find people interesting, but I do have days where I don't feel like talking to people. We have things go on. We've got adult lives, we've got kids, we've got spouses, we've got all this stuff.
No, I'm just gonna peel back the curtain. I haven't known a day where you haven't felt like talking. 15 years together, I'm not quite sure there's been a day where you haven't felt like talking.
Well, there's probably been a few, probably not all that many.
But I know what you mean. I'm just obviously been saying,
Yes.
like, there's days where we just want to sit at home, right? There's days where we do just want to relax. So we're taking our anniversary holiday in 2 weeks, and there's going to be days where we're out exploring and days where we're just, watching some Netflix and just laying there, not really doing anything and just relaxing, right? Like, we all have days where we need to recharge our social battery a little bit as well.
Yes, exactly. So you have to, as I said, respect people's boundaries and sort of meet where they are. But if you are in tune to people's body language and their verbal cues, you know whether to lean in or to back off. And I think that's very important. And so that's when it's especially face-to-face. And we need to understand that as well when we're working with social media. I mean, you consider the amount of times that you have these messages hit your inbox and it's just like they're screaming out everything. And it's like, whoa, hang on, you don't even know me. Like, where's this come from? Please don't do that, people. If that's something you do, it needs to take time, and you need to, gradually warm into things together and really sort of work at a pace together, rather than just flying out of the blocks and not knowing how the other person is or how they're going to receive what you have to say.
Yeah. And again, I mean, just a slight quick tangent on that. But yeah, people will say, oh, I don't know what I should tell this person. I'm like, well, maybe you should ask them some more questions first. Like, if you ask them more questions, you'll know where to take the conversation. If it's like, if you're just coming in, just fire hose of information onto people, they're gonna back up and talk about it even in a coaching point of view. Like if you were learning to play tennis and the coach is going to throw like one ball at a time so you can hit it back. If they throw a whole bucket of balls at you, you're just going to put your hands up, you're going to turn your back, you're going to miss all the shots, right? And it's the same thing when we just try and flood people with all these conversations instead of just actually having some communication and step by step having asking a question, getting the response, asking a question, getting the response. It's got to be like a dance like that, right? We can't just throw everything at people.
That's right. Yes. So you're communicating, you're connecting, you're establishing that common ground, building trust, and then into developing a relationship or a friendship or some deeper connection, if that's the way that it's going to go. Not trying to do it the other way around, because I can't see that working.
Yeah. So let's get into some like scripts and practical things. So pop a little thing up on the screen there. So Ford, when people talk about connecting and again, fundamental skills of networking, connecting, there's Ford, there's form, there's frogs, there's all these sort of acronyms essentially of asking people 4 great questions. So where are you from? Occupation, what do you do? Recreation, what are your hobbies? And then motivation, like what are your goals? What inspires you? And again, whether it's form or from or frog, you're just changing motivation to goals, all those sorts of things. But again, when I'm talking to people, when I'm coaching people and training people, and they especially goals, they'll just say I feel really weird reaching out to someone and just saying, hey, what are your goals? And say, well, yes, you don't the goals is an umbrella term, right? We're not just, hey, Angela, where are you from? What do you do for work? What do you do on the weekends? And what motivates you to get out of bed, right? So if we break down these 4 points, so you've got great questions that you ask when you're coaching, when you're mentoring, and when you're just networking out with people. You've got great questions that you use to actually find out this information without sounding, quite stale and robotic. So I thought we could work through that for people. So if you struggle with this, guys, get the pen and paper out, write these things down, or again, just pause and rewind the podcast or the video, whatever you're doing. Write these things down as scripts and templates that you can use. And then, as always, just massage them into your own voice as well. Start with Angie's template as tracks to run on, but put your own voice into it and feel free to just fiddle it around so it sounds like you. But let's start with the F. So let's start with from. So how would you, connecting with someone, ask them where they're from?
Okay. So, well, actually, this one here, I call it the F is for family, or you can call it from. So now I have made notes here, and I'll read through them in case anyone, as you said, does want to make notes. So now, if you're in a situation where you're in an elevator or you're in the line at the supermarket, they're the little ones where it might just be like, how's your day been so far? Or pay someone a compliment, or I love your jacket. Where did you get that from? Or that kind of thing. That's just, and those connections I really like because they're just organic and they flow, and that you've got that person there just for a few minutes. This
so
what we're about to cover.
Icebreakers, essentially.
Exactly. Yes. They can last for quite some time, and I've had quite a few last an amount of time, but essentially it's just for a few minutes. That they can go for quite a while. So the first one for families, so it can be, so for example, you're chatting to someone at a party, you're in an area there where you've got someone there that you're just going to spend time with. There's people all everywhere, and so you've got time to kill and get to know each other. So it might be, tell me about your family. Now they might talk about, their spouse, their children, even their pets. Do you live locally? Have you always lived there, or have you always lived here? Do you have family there? Now, if you're at a party, it's like, how do you know Andrew, who's the party person? Or, how did you meet? How long have you known each other? There's so many different areas of the F that you can discover. Now, they're short and they're sharp, but it really will open up sort of area for exploration there. But also, as I said before, answers from that is what you can then build on for other questions, if not straight away, but down the track when you can sort of build on those.
Cool. And this is probably a little bit more like the intellectual connection, isn't it? Like when we
Yes.
start off here. Yeah. So we're
Yes.
getting that information. Yep. Cool. So what about occupation? What about work? Like, I mean, how would you
So,
open those conversations?
okay. So with that, that's when I would kind of move on to, I always say, so what keeps you busy? And the reason I say that is the person may have just been fired from their job. They might have quit. So they could be a business owner, an employee, they could be a student, they could be a volunteer, they may have just retired. There could be anything. So that's a good way to word it, so that it's not assuming that someone has a traditional job. Then I would generally say, that's really interesting. How did you get involved in that? How long have you been doing that for? Or even, can you see yourself doing this long term? And that's when you're going to figure out, like, people, when you ask them that, that's when they'll be like, oh, I love my job. I love my business. So I might be like, oh, it's okay, it pays the bills, but it's not really what I want to be doing. If they say that, then you build on that and you can extend from there. Really, what would you love to be doing? And then you're kind of moving into other areas. You're kind of then transitioning from that sort of intellectual conversation more into an emotional kind of realm.
Awesome. And I've just seen, I've got a shout out to Mandy, because Mandy's an absolute legend. Mandy and Candace from Africa. There's Tynan as well. It's awesome. Great to see so many people jumping on. Recreation. So, recreation, how do you bring up those questions? And this is a bit more like, this is when we start to talk a little bit more emotional, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a little bit black and white. Where do you work or not? That's very objective. We start to talk more visceral things when we talk about recreation, stuff we enjoy, our motivations in life. We start to talk a bit more emotional at this point, right?
That's right. And I'll quickly inject something here. If you find that the conversation isn't really for you, or you can tell it's really not for them, this is the time to sort of bow out and just politely, it was really nice to meet you, enjoy the party, and kind of wander off. If you find that that the connection is going well and you are genuinely interested in getting to know this person more, moving into this area is where you're going to find your common ground. And as you say, it's coming into more of the emotional side of it. So I would say to someone
just interrupting, thinking back, the first time I tried to talk to you at work, you sort of was like, hey, it was nice meeting you, and then walked off. It was like,
it was very...
something like that, right? You didn't seem to want to continue the conversation.
It was very busy in the hospital that day. So my main question would be, what do you do for fun? That's the main thing. So, and that could be anything. They might talk about sport, music, art, hiking, anything. It might be Netflix, family, whatever. Something else, what do you do when you're not working or studying? Base that off their answer from above. How did you get interested in XYZ? Is there a skill or hobby? This is a good one. Is there a skill or hobby you'd really love to learn? And that's when you kind of see people light up a bit, because then they really start thinking about, you might be speaking to a doctor who'd love to be a chef, or, you really sort of, and then drawing from what they're saying and then thinking about how that can somehow relate to your world. And then even like, have you seen any good movies lately? Have you read any good books, podcasts, audibles? Have you read Andrew's book, The Way Out?
Shameless plug.
Yeah.
No, but well, even like our good friend David, who's been on this podcast and a great mentor of ours, and stayed in the house a couple of months ago here, and he always has the question, like, if time and money were no option, what would you be doing? And he always tells the story of a doctor that he was working with who just worked 70, 80 hours a week as a doctor, just treating patients. And it wasn't until someone asked him that question that he finally just broke down and said, I've always wanted to play the piano. And even his wife was shocked. His wife's like, in all these years, you've never even opened up to that. It's just been work, work, work. And he eventually, got himself into a position where he could sell the business because he just wanted to chase his passion of learning the piano. Like, it's amazing when you let people imagine and just open up their minds what's really underneath there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's right. So that area there itself, I mean, that was only 6 questions, but you can really explore that area with people in depth for quite some time. And as I said, when you get their answers, you build on it to ask the next and the next, and people love it, because a lot of the time it's like self-exploration. They don't consciously think about it on a day-to-day, and so to have someone ask it, they often really enjoy it.
Yeah, awesome. Now, I know when you were sort of jotting out some notes and jotting out some scripts for this, and you had like 10 top tips, and I was like, well, I think we might even need to do a part 2 of the podcast, because each of those tips were really awesome. But what would be your biggest top tip to finish with today, like for people again who really want to build on their connection skills and really work on that muscle, go out and connect with more people, build up a greater network? What would be your top tip for people?
Well, before I share my top tip, can I share the D part of
Oh,
fool?
sorry. No, yes, sorry, my bad.
Sorry.
Yes, D.
I thought you're trying to get rid of me. No, I'll be super quick with this part.
No.
This
That's totally my fault. I got distracted talking about doctors playing pianos.
No, that's okay. So the D is for dreams, and this is the more important, probably the most important part. If you have gotten to the D in the conversation, and it may not be on the first exchange, it might be, you might get through F and O when you first meet someone, and then you meet up for a cup of tea later in the week, and then you cover R and D. D are the dreams, and that's where people's hot buttons are. That's really what opens them up. So as an example I have here, do you have plans for the holidays? Have you been on any interesting trips lately? Do you have a favorite holiday destination? If you could travel anywhere, where would you go and why? Is there a goal you're working towards? What would life look like when you reach that goal? Now, that could be business, educational, financial, personal, anything like that. And where do you see yourself in the future? So that could be 12 months, 3 years, 5 years. So that one there, if you've gotten to the D and people, like at that point, they know, like, and trust you, and they're really willing to open up, and you see the excitement and get excited for them too. Match their energy. People love it.
Awesome. And yeah, my bad. I jumped ahead on that one, but definitely it is. It's like, I think the reality is we're sort of, when you're kids, you go out and a couple of things. I mean, any dream you want, what do you want to be an astronaut? You want to, be a world champion, whatever it is. As kids, we're just taught to dream and dream and dream. And the other things as kids is that kids are just natural connectors, right? There'll be 2 kids at a park and they'll just run up to each other and start talking and becoming best friends, right? These are adult learned responses at the end of the day, where we stop dreaming and we stop connecting with people. And, we all that, don't talk to strangers, don't get in strangers' cars. Like, that was all our generation. Now you just jump in a random person's Uber and they drive you around and, and then you give them 5 stars at the end, kind of stuff. There's definitely that shift there. But really, at the end of the day, we grow up just dreaming and connecting with everyone, like let's get naked and run around the park. Like, that's normal for 2-year-olds, but it suddenly hits a point where, no, you can't do that. Don't talk to those strangers. And there's safety precautions, obviously, and all those things. But so many of our natural human instincts to just dream bigger and connect with people are taken away, right? And so opening people back up with great questions will give you great answers, and people will really start to dream and get emotional and visceral, as we talked about before. So yeah, top tip. So finishing with like a sort of top tip to just bring everything to a close tonight.
Can I have 2? It's because I can't pick between the. So one of them would be like to be you, like be genuine and be authentic, because people see through the BS. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. Just be yourself. Don't put up masks and try and be someone that you're not. Don't be fake. Just be genuine and authentic is probably that's sort of the main one. And And then the second one, which is this would probably be the most important one, is learning to be a great listener, listening with intent. And as I said before, that a lot of what comes with that is getting rid of distraction. And this is one thing, as you would know, Andrew, that I have really struggled with, and I do even to this day for reasons, is focus. It is being completely focused on the person that you're connecting with. Now, especially when it's with children, when it's with people that are potential customers, relationships, but it is giving people your focus so that when someone walks away from a connection with you, they feel better about themselves and they feel like you have valued them and you have listened to them, and they've just the interaction with you has been worthwhile. So that would probably be my number one.
Awesome. Angie, you've given so much value and just keeping an eye on the comment section as well that are coming in off the Facebook Live. Thanks to everyone who's been on live and dropping all these great comments, and great to see everyone getting a ton of value. But I appreciate you. And as I said, we live together, so I'll force you to get on the podcast again soon, and we'll go through some of these other top tips that you went through. We'll go like a bit of a part B of this, because I know it's such a fundamental skill, but it's also one, because it's so fundamental, we can overlook it. And people are like, well, yeah, I know how to talk. I know how to talk about myself. I've been doing it my whole life. And it's so fundamental that we overlook it, but you can't build a business without some kind of connection skills. The one thing I just sort of add as a top tip as well is in this day and age, that one of the great things about social media and looking at all the positives of this, there are so many ways to connect, and we can't avoid the connection, but we do get to choose how we connect. And it's the same way as, like you and I just did a yoga class before we jumped on tonight. I like CrossFit. You like your more sort of like boxing, HIIT gym kind of stuff. But we both know that we need to exercise. We need to work out. We need to eat well, but we get to choose how we do it. And it's the same with connection. We can't avoid the connection, but we do get to choose how we do it, whether it is through social media, whether it is face-to-face, whether we're going into groups, whether we're marketing and doing lives and reels and all those sorts of stuff. So guys, find the way that works for you. So jumping off Angie's point about be yourself, choose the way that works for you. If you're more introverted, find other ways to do it that are comfortable for you, or environments that are comfortable for you. Otherwise, thanks everyone who's been supporting the podcast up to episode 250, which is absolutely crazy, because I was happy to get 10 when I first launched podcast. I was happy just to 10 episodes up. If you got value out of this and you're listening in on the podcast, take a screenshot, pop it up on your stories, tag me. I'm at Andrew James Logan. Tag Angie as well. She's Angela Renee Logan. Just let us know your great tidbits. If you're watching it on Facebook as well and you got value, hit that share button. Or if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button as well, and check out all the other training videos that are on there. Angie, thanks for being on. Everyone else, thanks for supporting, and we'll catch you all soon.